The 14th of August 2005, 6 o'clock in the morning, a passenger aircraft Helios 522 takes off from the city of Lana in Cyprus. This aircraft is going to Athens, city of Greece, which is going to take about 1.5 hours. There are a total of 121 people on board, including 115 passengers, 4 cabin crew, and there are 2 pilots. About 25 minutes after takeoff, at 6:23, the aircraft reaches an altitude of 34,000 feet and is flying on its chosen path. About 1.5 hours after takeoff, the plane reaches Athens International Airport at 7:37. Athens ATC tries to grant landing permission by contacting Helios 522 several times, but they do not get any response and the plane keeps rotating in a holding pattern without any contact. After 15 minutes, an alert is issued and 2 F-16 fighter jets of the Hellenic Air Force are sent to check the aircraft. He reports that there is no external damage to the plane, but the captain's seat is empty and the first officer is leaning forward and not moving at all. Apart from this, none of the passengers are reacting after seeing the F-16 jets. Many passengers are sitting wearing oxygen masks, but they too are not reacting at all. After some time, the pilot of F-16 has seen that a man is sitting in the cockpit without any oxygen mask. Enters and sits in the captain's seat. He puts on headphones and is seen using the controls in front of him. The F-16 pilot tells him to land through hand gestures to the person sitting behind him. But the person points his finger downwards and within a few moments the Helios 522 aircraft starts falling rapidly and crashes. This accident takes the lives of all 121 people on board the plane and leaves behind some deep questions. After all, what happened in those 1.5 hours after takeoff that no one, the passenger and the first officer, were not moving at all? Why was the captain's seat vacant, and who was the person who entered the cockpit and what was he doing there? To know the answers to these questions, we will have to go back 8 hours. Time 26:00 am. The same Helios 522 aircraft lands in Cyprus, and during this flight he notices some problem in the plane. He reports to the ground engineer team that the seal of the right service door of the plane is free. This door was also making noise during the flight. There are courses in any plane. It is very important to close them properly, otherwise cabin air pressure can happen. But what is this cabin air pressure? You must have seen in photos that when many mountaineers climb thousands of feet high mountains like Mount Everest, they need an oxygen mask for survival. The concentration of oxygen starts decreasing, which means oxygen molecules get destroyed, due to which it becomes difficult to breathe normally. But we still get less oxygen than before. At the peak of 29,000 feet high Mount Everest, the air pressure is 3 times less, due to which there is a risk of hypoxia. In hypoxia, the human body parts are not able to function properly and the person becomes unconscious and ultimately dies. Death can also occur, and that is why mountaineers need an oxygen mask and an oxygen tank. But most commercial aircraft fly at an altitude of 37,000 feet, higher than Mount Everest, yet the passengers sitting in the aircraft are able to breathe easily without any oxygen mask. But how? Because of cabin air pressurization, the engines of the plane pull the air from the front and compress it and throw it back rapidly, due to which the plane moves forward and some compressor made from these engines is pumped inside the plane so that the air pressure inside should be maintained. Cabin pressure is controlled by the outflow valve. If the air pressure is more than required, the outflow valve is opened so that the air pressure can reduce and vice versa, and this is the cabin air pressurization system. Now coming back to the story, 44-year-old ground engineer Lane Irwin gets the responsibility to inspect the door of Helios 522. He does a visual inspection of the door and then checks the cabin pressurization leak to confirm whether any leakage is not happening. At this time, the plane was on the ground and the engines of the plane were off, so without using the engines, the engineer starts inspecting, where he switches the pressurization system to manual from auto. In all this inspection, engineers didn't notice any problems regarding door sound, where engineers approved a plane to take off for the next destination, but he forgets one thing. According to the rules, The ground engineer had to put the pressurization system back in auto mode. Actually, while the plane is flying, it is very important for the pressurization system to be in auto mode so that the plane could automatically maintain the cabin air pressure according to its altitude, but the ground engineer accidentally left it in manual mode. But this was not only a mistake, rather this was only the beginning of mistakes. 4 cabin crew at about 5 o'clock and the 2 pilots do a pre-flight meeting, and then they board the plane to set it up. The captain of this flight was 58-year-old Hans-Jürgen, who had a total of 35 years of experience and 16,900 flight horses, and the first officer was the 51-year-old Pampas Carolambus, which had an experience of about 17 years and 7,500 flights today. To prepare the plane for takeoff, both the pilots had to complete some duties, which is called pre-flight procedure. During this pre-flight procedure, the first officer, one of the duties of the pilot was to ensure that the pressurization mode was on auto, but the first officer left it in manual mode. At 6 o'clock a.m. the flight took off and the pilot started checking the after takeoff checklist, and the first item of this checklist was to check the pressurization system, but surprisingly it again left in manual mode. But how can such experienced pilots make such a big mistake? The answer to this is expectation bias. According to human psychology investigators, the pilots had become its victims by expectation. Being expectation biased, a person sees or hears what he usually sees or hears. While the reality was different, generally no one disturbed the pressurization mode and it always remained on auto mode. That is why pilot Brian had a strong expectation that the pressurization would be on auto, so strong that even after checking the note 3 times, his brain assumed that it was on auto. The investigator also found that when the pressurization was in manual mode, the plane was at an altitude of 12,000, and then the plane's takeoff configuration warning sound started playing. Both the pilots get confused because the takeoff configuration warning comes when the plane is on the ground and not ready for takeoff. Due to the pressurization system being in manual mode, the air pressure of the plane was continuously falling, and a cabin altitude warning was received when the air pressure of the plane was low as per the altitude of the plane. Accidentally, takeoff configuration and cabin warning sound was identical, and hence the pilots got confused. After 2 minutes, the pilot comes in contact with the ground engineer and tells him about the takeoff configuration warning. During this time, due to the plane being on autopilot, also keeps moving forward and its altitude keeps increasing. On reaching an altitude of 14,000 feet, due to air pressure, the oxygen masks of the passengers are released, and the pilots also get the indication of the release of the oxygen mask in the cockpit, but at the same time, due to the air pressure, the equipment cooling system of the plane also gets activated. They stop working because they do not get enough air pressure to cool the equipment, and the pilots also get a warning of equipment cooling off. Due to the combination of these 2 warnings, the pilot's attention unfortunately is only on the equipment cooling off warning. If the pilots had seen the indication of the passenger oxygen mask being released at this time, they would have understood that the cabin air pressure has become low, and in case of such problem with the air pressure, the pilot have to immediately apply the portable oxygen mask they have. A portable oxygen mask has to be used so that he can control the plane while remaining conscious and can reduce his height. But he does not use the oxygen mask because the pilot does not realize that the air pressure is getting low, and he starts feeling that the whole problem is with the equipment cooling. Hence the captain asks the ground engineer for the location of the circuit breakers of the plane so that he can reduce the overflow of electricity and prevent the equipment from overheating. In order to save them, the ground engineer tells them that the circuit breakers are located just behind the captain's seat, and after this the pilot loses contact and captain rises from the seat to retrieve the circuit breakers and faints from hypoxia. Similarly, first officer also becomes unconscious. Within 12 minutes, the oxygen cylinders of the passengers start emptying, and one by one all the passengers become unconscious. During this time, the plane set on autopilot reaches a height of 34,000 feet and continues moving towards Athens. After about an hour of all this, the plane reaches Athens International Airport and starts moving in a holding pattern. The fighter jets come and report the situation of the plane, and after some time a person is seen. The person we see entering the cockpit is none other than the flight attendant Andres Prodromo, who remains conscious until he enters the cockpit after using the emergency portable oxygen supply available in the flight. Andreas has a UK commercial pilot's license but was not qualified to fly Boeing's Helios 522. Still, he tried to control the plane, but the plane fuel ran out. Yet after signaling to the pilot of F-16, he was telling that plane is falling down, shortly after which the plane starts descending rapidly. Andres is not able to land the plane safely, but he managed to crush the plane in a mountainous area away from the urban area of Athens. So this was Helios 522 tragic story. Due to the wrong position of a small switch and many unfortunate incidents that followed, this plane crashed. 121 people lost their lives and it became the most terrible and deadliest plane crash in the history of Greece. If you liked the video, then do like and subscribe to the channel. Do it because such content is going to come on this channel which world has never seen. I will meet you in the next video. Thank you so much.